This is the Footbrawl Podcast with your hosts, Tyler, Andy, and Boyer.
Welcome back to Mantasy Footbrawl Podcast, presented by your performance-enhancing dads. What's happening, fellas?
Not much.
Fantasy football is happening.
How do you
Football
feel
is
about
happening.
your draft? Should we talk about it now, or should we talk about it in a minute?
I don't think we have much else to talk about.
That's fair. The cuts happened, so that was fun. That shouldn't affect any of our redraft league, though. So
Well,
I said shouldn't. So let's
tell that
jump
to
in.
Marlon Mack for $4 on Robbie's roster.
All right, so we're gonna cover some draft grades, some draft positives, some draft negatives. Tell you how your team sucks. Maybe if there's some positive in there somewhere. We're gonna just break down this draft. So let's get started. Boyer, you gonna do me a favor and run through Andy's team for me real quick?
Yeah, I'll rattle that off real quick. I even have it up or something. All right, Andy. He's got a Herbert at quarterback. He's got a Big Chubb at running back 1, Javonte running back 2, Metcalf and Thielen at wide receiver, Goddard at tight ends, McLaurin in the flex, Carlson at kicker, Denver at defense, and he's got on the bench the new to life Antonio Gibson, Juju Smith-Schuster, Dak Prescott, the Lizard Lazard, Isaiah Spiller, and KJ Osborne.
How do you feel about the draft for Andy, Boyer?
I gave him a B plus, and at the time of the draft, I thought it was worse than that. But then looking at his team, kind of outside of it, I like his team. I don't think he got as much top end talent as I expected him to, but he ended up with a lot of just generally good players to have for a fantasy football team. I mean, Chubb is always good. He's very consistent. His ceiling's not going to be running back 1 or anything like that, but like he's not going to be lower than running back 10. So like you can't be upset with that to me. Javonte, was a good keeper to have. His wide receivers at first like look a little rough. Metcalf being thrown to by Gio doesn't look great. Jimmy G probably would have been nice to have for him. Thielen is aging and might fall off a cliff, but if he doesn't, then he's going to be scoring double-digit touchdowns almost guaranteed. And then he has just a ton of other wide receivers that he could easily start, which is going to be a nightmare to pick between them. But it's nice to have it because injuries will happen. Some of these wide receivers will kind of rise to the top for him and make it easier for him. So I felt like he started with a good spot, and his draft ended up being really deep, but still had quality players, and he's got a lot of potential for his starters. He's got a high floor with his quarterbacks, with Herbert and running backs. I had his best pick as Juju at $11. $11 for what should be the number 1 wide receiver in a Chiefs offense. Like that might end up being crazy. Like he could end up putting just ridiculous numbers up. He's done it before. So when we're looking at like who's the next cup, who's done it before, who's now in a better situation, and Juju fits that bill. Not to say he'll be wide receiver 1, but if he were to end up to be a wide receiver, a top 12 guy for $11, that's insane value, not just for this year, but probably going to be for next year too. I did have his worst pick at Spiller. I like the rest of the picks at the rest of the values that he got him. Spiller at 4. Spiller was injured in training camp. Training camp from the Chargers was saying he wasn't exactly stealing or taking the backup role like he should have been. He was in the mix, but it wasn't really his at the time. And he might have a little, he's going to struggle. I think he's got maybe a hamstring or a quad or something like that. So he might struggle in the first few weeks getting carries. I would bet more likely than not that Spiller ends up being a waiver wire cut for Andy at some point, and then maybe a repick up, 8-9 games into the season. I felt like $4 for Spiller was just a little bit of a reach for that at the time. I mean, we'll see, but that was just to me, it's nitpicky. If you're picking Spiller at $4, that's your worst pick. And that means you had a pretty good draft. So
I'll jump in. I had him like B minus C plus range for the draft. I looked at him. Listen, I looked at it strictly off the draft. I'm not looking at it as Brian Robinson is out and Antonio Gibson is your running back 3 now, which he is, but strictly coming off the draft. With Gibson in the situation he's in, that partially pushed you down because that and Isaiah Spiller were your running back 3 and 4, which made me slightly nervous. That's a big downfall that I had to your draft. Your wide receiver depth is fine, but your running backs, I thought, could be hurting. But now with Gibson, I'd probably raise you a little bit. But since I'm looking strictly off that draft day, that situation was different that day. I thought your best pick was Dallas Goedert at $5 when I started seeing these other guys. I mean, I got Cole Kmet for $7. I'm sure that's going to be probably my worst pick from everybody. Ertz was going for $5. Goddard went for $5. Schultz and Hawkinson went for $10, and some people would say Goddard's in about that same range. So I think that was the value pick that you got. Pat Fryermuth went for $5, and he had a good rookie season, but who knows what Pittsburgh's going to be with him. So that was my best pick for you. Honorable mention for you would be Allen Lazard at 10, because I think he, like Boyer said about Juju, could be that guy that rises for you. I have higher hopes with Lazard, I think, because he has less competition, I feel, than Juju might in Kansas City. Who knows? The worst pick, I didn't really have a worst pick because I wasn't even mad about Isaiah Spiller at the end because you had $5 left to spend and you threw it. Like, whatever. I put Nick Chubb strictly because I feel like he was the end of a tier and he went higher than you wanted to pay.
For sure.
And the value wasn't quite there. I'm not saying it's a bad pick because he's a good player, but for the price he went, I think it was a little high.
Yeah,
Yep.
Andy,
No arguments here.
Andy, before the draft started, because it updates as it goes. Before the draft started, what was Chubb's value on your Magic spreadsheet?
So I think spreadsheet said that he should have been 61, and then I adjusted his stats a little bit to where I see him being and got him up to 65. But I mean, you guys both kind of hit the nail on the head there. Was that like it was the end of the tier. Like, I think Chubb, depending on what rankings you're looking at, was RB 10, 11 this year, and like all of the top 14 or 15 guys were gone when Chubb got nominated. So I knew I was going to have to overpay to get him, and I knew I needed him on my team because I had already missed on Kelsey, and I had been kind of eyeballing him. Devontae Adams was gone. I've been kind of looking at him, and Justin Jefferson, all the big names were gone at that point. So I was like, well, shit, I'm sitting here holding a ton of money already. Like, I'm going to go get my guy. I like Chubb. I like what he can do. I like the offensive line. So
you always have liked Chubb.
I didn't mind overpaying, but I acknowledged that I overpaid. I will say I like individually all my players that I got. I even enjoy the price I got most of them at. But looking at my roster as a whole and seeing that I had $220 going into the draft, I've got Thielen as my wide receiver 3, and I've got Juju and Lazard, both of whom I really like to be the guy on their teams with great quarterbacks. And all 3 of those guys add up to $38, which is fine, but as wide receiver 3, 4, and 5, that's a lot of money. Like, what I should have done is taken the 27 I spent on DK, taken the 23 I spent on Terry, and got a $50 receiver, gotten a Diggs or somebody like that. Just got the top end wide receiver 1, and then had Thielen, Smith, Schuster, and Lazard behind them as my 2, 3, 4. That would have rounded out my team a little better, because right now it's just going to be a nightmare picking who I'm playing each week. So, and like Ty said, I could have used another running back. I was in on bidding for a handful of guys, but I liked Gibson to still contribute, even if it was a 50-50 thing. knowing that I've got plenty of quality receivers to stick in my flex, and just needing Gibson to be a guy for bye weeks and injuries. Not super stressed about it. Obviously, that's probably panning out pretty well for me, given what happened to Brian Robinson. But yeah, I feel good with the players that I got. I think I could have constructed my team a little bit better.
All right, fair enough.
Also, KJ Osborne for $1, love it. Absolutely love it.
Well, and handcuffing Thielen was a good thing, right?
You gotta love a handcuff.
All right. So Andy had an okay draft. Could have been better. Could have been worse. I think we're on an agreement on that one. Andy, you want to break down Boyer for me?
Sure. Boyer, your glasses look stupid. Oh, I mean, you want me to talk about his team?
Your beard's a little patchy.
Boyer, your quarterback looks stupid. All right. Boyer's got Josh Allen, Aaron Jones, ETN, Tyreek Hill, Mike Williams, Dawson Knox, Brandon Cooks, McManus, Rams defense, Renfro, Damian Pierce, Breece Hall, Robert Tonyan, Tyler Boyd, and TDP. Really liked you going out and getting Josh Allen. 19 for the top quarterback on the board, I think, is a good price. We've seen him go higher than that the last 3 years at least. So I know that there was quite a bit of value in quarterbacks later in the draft, but even still, get the top guy, and you didn't have to pay out the ass to do it. I'm happy with that. Your keepers were good with ETN and Mike Williams and Brandon Cooks. And then getting Hunter Renfro for 2 and Robert Tonyan for 2 and Dawson Knox for 1, I thought were really, really good values. And then Marlon Mack getting cut answers all the questions that nobody really had at this point about Damian Pierce being running back 1 for the Texans. Now, I don't know how excited I am for a Texans running back, but $15 for that guy is going to be a good price regardless of how well he does. Aaron Jones for 57, maybe not. It really depends on, how much AJ Dillon's eaten into that, how much the offense slows down without Devontae Adams. Does it slow down? Does Aaron Rodgers just throw the ball 18 times a game to Aaron Jones? I don't think so. But for $57, it's fine. All in all, I thought Boyer had a pretty good draft. I don't have grades, so a G for Boyer.
For general, he had a general draft.
A good draft. G for good.
General draft.
Ty, what'd you think?
General draft. So I put Boyer at a B plus. I liked him pairing Aaron Jones and Damian Pierce with Travis Etienne, pairing Tyreek Hill with Mike Williams, getting the 2 tight ends, both cheap, taking his shots. I thought all in all, Boyer had a solid draft. I liked his draft more than Andy's going in, just by the positional depth he has with the running back, having Brandon Cooks and Renfro as his wide receiver 3 and 4. I like those 2 guys to just be able to be floor plays and get you some points. So I have your best pick is Hunter Renfro for $2 because I think he's still going to get targets. I think that Carr is still going to trust him after last year. Yeah, Devontae Adams is going to be there, but I don't think Hunter Renfro is going away. Honorable mention, Dawson Knox at $1, like Andy said. Great value there. I think he could be a stud still this year. I put your worst pick in as Breece Hall. Not strictly because I don't like Breece Hall, but $42 seemed to be over. We talked about it during the draft as it was happening. He just kept going. Najee Harris went high last year as a running back 1 in that class. We all knew Breece Hall was going to get bid up. But Najee's situation last year was a whole lot better than Breece Hall's situation this year.
For sure.
I still think they're going to work in Michael Carter. They've got a lot of wide receiver weapons. Their quarterback, who knows what Zach Wilson's going to play versus not play. Who knows what that team is going to be as a whole. The Steelers are always halfway decent. Najee going there was good. The Jets are always, at best. So
Their offensive line's decent, even with that rookie going down. Their offensive line looks like it should be good this year, so
right.
maybe. But I also am reading that Michael Carter's going to be getting a chunk of the touches. Although Michael Carter just got dropped in our league, Boyer, if you want to go check that out. So, we'll see what happens. But 42 did feel a little high, especially for looking at Boyer's roster. It wasn't necessarily a guy that he needed since he had Aaron Jones, he had Dameon Pierce, he had ETN. I don't think that Brees Hall slots in behind Dameon Pierce. Maybe he does now because Pierce is the clear-cut number one. But I mean, for the $42, you didn't need to spend it there. You could have went and got Kelsey maybe, but it's fine. You've got depth, and that's a good thing to have.
Right. And the only other one that I was going to say anything on would be Tyler Boyd at $3. But again, like I said about the Isaiah Spiller for Andy, it was the very end of his draft. He had a couple dollars left to throw. He threw it on Boyd. And I get everybody likes Boyd still, and he's still a solid receiver, but he's still the wide receiver 3 on his team. He'll still get touches, but once again, like Boyer said with Isaiah Spiller, he's going to be a waiver wire drop piece. He's going to be a piece that gets moved off his roster, maybe back on the roster, and we'll see. So maybe those couple extra dollars could have gone somewhere else as well, but it is what it is at that point in the draft. So,
Boyer, how'd you feel?
I felt pretty good. I definitely went off script. I wanted to go hero running back strategy, and I didn't. I was happy to get Aaron Jones where he was at 57 compared to so many other players going pretty much high 60s otherwise. I mean, there's a couple other value guys out there like Kamara and stuff, but for the most part, I wasn't upset about my drafts. I did believe in Dameon Pierce, but I was really nervous about having him and Etienne filling in that running back 2 spot. Like there was just a lot of questions, and I wanted a third running back that I felt like at least had, talent if he didn't necessarily have the volume. And Brees Hall was really the last one in the tier, kind of going to like Andy's issue with Chubb. So destroyed his potential keeper value unless he's somehow top 12. But I do believe in Brees Hall, and I do believe in his talent. And I think, week 8 or so, the Jets could just start, trying to run him into the ground more or less, trying to, see what they've got out of him. So I've got plenty of depth if he doesn't work out early in the season. I expect him to work out at some point. It would be kind of silly if he didn't. It's just going to be interesting to see. I mean, if the Jets can't move the ball and can't score touchdowns, well, I got Etienne and Dameon Pierce, I guess, who can hopefully do it. But so one of those 3 guys is going to be a running back too. I don't know which one is yet, but that's why I have all 3 of them.
Yeah.
But Ty, I had Brees Hall as my worst player as well. So we were on the same page on that one.
That's fair. All right, so I'm going to jump over to Fryer. I gave Fryer a D for the draft grade. I know he didn't have a lot of money going into it, but just the way he split his money up didn't sit very well. He got Lamar Jackson, Damian Harris, James Conner, Mike Evans, Hollywood Brown, Dalton Schultz, Devontae Adams, Matt Gay, Cleveland defense, Kareem Hunt, Jerry Jeudy, James Robinson, Elijah Moore, Julio Jones, and Rashad White. Damian Harris at 15 isn't a bad value. Kareem Hunt at 17. If you got Damian Harris for 15, I'm not sure Kareem Hunt should have probably gone for 17. I also then don't know about James Robinson at 9. I feel like there could have been throwing some of this money together, like Andy said, for Boyer even, or for himself, to go get somebody else. If Damian Harris takes a step back to Ramondre, and he's not going to get 15 touchdowns like he did last year anyway, James Conner is a solid running back, but he's had some injury and health issues. He's going to be okay, but those 2 running backs as a whole don't get me excited for fantasy football. Mike Evans, Hollywood Brown, Devontae Adams is a solid group of wide receivers. Dalton Schultz at $10, also okay. But I just feel like Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore have to be something. I feel like Kareem Hunt and James Robinson have to be something this year. And those aren't necessarily names that I'm trying to bank on. I feel like he needed another big name. Like I said, he didn't have a lot of money going in. His keepers weren't bad with James Conner and Hollywood Brown, not spending a lot. So he wasn't in an absolute shit situation. But I feel like he should have spent up on somebody maybe other than Davante Adams, maybe cut back on that and pick somebody else. But I don't mind the price for Davante Adams. So I think there needed to be an adjustment somewhere else.
Where you want in, or you want me to take it?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. So I gave him a C plus. The only reason I agree with Ty, his running backs are crap. I hate his running backs. But his wide receivers are excellent. His tight end is very good. He got a good quarterback at a good value. Lamar Jackson, I mean, he was the MVP in 2019. So we know he can do that and be essentially both a quarterback 1 and a running back 2 by himself, given the right situation. So like his team overall around his running backs is really good. And it kind of reminded me of like a 0 running back strategy, more or less, where you go and grab the top guys in a bunch of other spots. I like Dalton Schultz okay at tight ends. Adding Hunt and Robinson is, I mean, it's just not exciting. I think Hunt will probably provide him something earlier in the season, but he's also wants to be traded. So who knows what happens with that. Robinson could provide something later on in the year, but if Etienne jumps off the page in the first few games, then Robinson, even when he comes back and he's healthy, might not get the ball as much. So I don't like his running backs. James Conner is like $9. I don't like James Conner at all to start with, but for $9, it's fine. And he should have had him as his like flex RB3. And instead he's kind of his RB1. So that doesn't feel good. Damian Harris is already looking like he's going to be losing work to, is it Stevenson? They're in New England. Plus New England does whatever they want with 18 different running backs, and it doesn't seem to matter year to year. So I gave him a C plus because he did have a well filled out team around those running backs, and his running backs looked like they could be useful. But he's going to need some guys to overperform, I think, if he wants a real chance, or he's going to have to be real active on the waiver wire for those running backs.
Yeah, so I think I'm a little higher on Fryer's team than you guys are. I agree with what's been said about his running backs, that they're not ideal as an RB1. There's not a clear RB1 fantasy running back. That said, Harris and Connor combined for 30 touchdowns last year. Will they do it again? Absolutely not. But even if they come 60% of the way, if they each get 10, they're fine. And pair that with Lamar Jackson, Davante Adams, Mike Evans, Dalton Schultz is a top 5 tight end probably. This is a fine team. I don't like the running backs. I don't like the amount of money he spent on Kareem Hunt. I like the Jeudy pick for 15. James Robinson for 9, also probably not great given that he's less than 12 months off a Achilles injury, and now he's going to be splitting time with ETN anyways. So turn 17 for Hunt and 9 for James Robinson into 26 on a decent running back, and it'd be a lot better.
Miles Sanders.
Stick with what you got, bud. Stick with what you got. But yeah, I think that the other pieces of Fryer's team are more than enough to have him being competitive, and the running backs could be fine. I don't project that they will be, but they certainly can be, and he only needs them to be decent.
Yeah, like I said, I just didn't like the way he split that money, and that it rubbed me the wrong way. So, but we'll see.
I didn't know you could be rubbed the wrong way.
Fryer, no, well, you're right. Fryer, for your sake, I hope your team's good, man. Boy, you're gonna jump into Robbie. I was just say jump into Joe Burrow because he's a quarterback. But let's talk about Robbie's team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so Robbie has Burrow, He's got Najee Harris, Leonard Fournette, Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, TJ Hawkinson, Saquon Barkley. He's got a kicker in a defense. And then he's got a Kenneth Walker, Raheem Mostert, Jacoby Myers, Jarvis Landry, Marlon Mack, and drafted Sammy Watkins. So I gave him a B-. I thought that he has a pretty good team, but it is going to live and die with Saquon. If Saquon rolls, then Najee and Saquon are going to look great. He's got decent enough wide receivers to get him through. I like Robinson and Mooney, although both of those are really probably wide receiver 2s. That they would be fine if Saquon and Najee, were lighting it up. I don't like his bench. Landry's aging. Mack was second on his team. Now cut. Right. Watkins and Myers are kind of meh. Watkins might win him week 1, but aside from that, I can't imagine he'll do much. Mostert is like 30, I think. Walker has upside, but he's also on a bad team, and he's behind Penny. So even if he gets injured,
and he just had back surgery.
He's still injured.
Oh, is he still injured? Okay, well, in all that case, it's really going to ride on Saquon. If Saquon is good, if Saquon is back to being Saquon, then Robbie will have a good team, which is why I liked kind of what he did. I don't personally believe in Saquon, but you can't deny that there is talent there, and he's done it before. He had a great rookie year. So if Saquon's good, Robbie's team will be fine. If Saquon is not good, then Robbie's team will struggle.
All right, so I like Robbie's team way less than Fryer's. He's got Najee and Saquon, fine, but Robbie's receivers are wide receiver 1, Mooney, wide receiver 2, Allen Robinson, wide receiver 3, Sammy Watkins, or Landry or Myers. Like, that is dog shit. And then, I would much rather have Lamar Jackson as my fantasy quarterback than Joe Burrow. I love Joe Burrow. He's a great quarterback in real life, and he's going to be a fine fantasy quarterback, but he's not Lamar Jackson week to week. I would so very much prefer Fryer's RB issues than Robbie's wide receiver issues right now. It's easier to find wide receivers on waivers and trades. I get that, but just looking at the drafts, I don't like what Robbie did here, and that's even assuming that Saquon is worth the $58 he spent on him and doesn't average 2.1 yards per carry like he has for the last 2.5 seasons of being hurt and not productive when he's healthy. So maybe Brian DeBall turns the offense around, maybe Saquon stays healthy, and maybe we see a huge year out of him, and Robbie's team looks amazing because of it. I see a world where that happens, but looking top to bottom, I don't like this team very much.
Yep. So I am with Andy. I have Robbie at a C- for my draft grades. I am opposite of Andy, that I would rather have the wide receiver issue than the running back issue. But I don't like this team top to bottom. I would agree with the Burrow take. I would agree with his wide receivers not being ideal. I do like Hawkinson for $10. I thought that wasn't bad because he would be my tight end 3 over Pitts probably. We had that discussion at some point. I think Hawkinson's still a stud. I think he's guaranteed he's a guaranteed top 5. I think he could be top 3. There's
a lot of mouths to feed. That's all I'm seeing.
He's a consistent guy, and for $10, I like that pick. But Burrow, to be honest with you, I'm not high on Fournette. That offensive line has gone down the shitter the last handful of weeks. Tom Brady's been missing. I mean, he'll come back and be fine, but they've got wide receiver issues going on right now. They've got injuries all over the place. And Leonard Fournette has just never excited me. I know that he was good last year, but he's also he's got to put up a bunch of touchdowns again. Otherwise, he could very easily regress. I hate his bench, kind of for the same reason I talked about Fryer. He spent a lot of money on, and I'm not even gonna say a lot of money, but he spent more money than he should have on all of those bench players.
Yeah, 4 for Mac, 3 for Landry, 3 for Watkins. 3
Well,
for
a lot of that was Robbie just pissing money into the wind because he had $8 left and everybody was down to dollar bid. So he was like $3, ha ha ha.
Right.
It's like, well, dude, like bid $1. If somebody bids you up to 2, then go 3. But when you have $7 left, then sell it for $2 next year. And if one of these guys turns into a keeper, then it's $2 in your pocket on that end too. Like, there's no reason to do it that way.
Right. Well, and Kenneth Walker going for 7. I get he came up a little bit earlier. First bench spot. You wanted a running back, whatever.
Could be a stud keeper.
Could be. Who knows? But Mostert, I wasn't paying 3 for Mostert. I'm not.
I love the Mostert pick. I did want to get back in and say that Mostert for 3. Is he going to be healthy all year? No. Is it the San Francisco offense that he was really good in, and is he still one of the faster players in the NFL? He sure is. And
Right.
The other guy that's there that's fighting with him is Chase Edmonds, and Myles Gaskin's still there allegedly, but like there's not a lot of sexy backs there. Sorry, Jay, I don't like Chase Edmonds. So Mostert for 3 I thought was a great get for Robbie. That's about the only player I was excited coming out of his draft.
I feel like between $2 and $7 for every position on your bench could have been adjusted, could have been fixed up, could have been
wide receiver.
Yeah, it adds up.
Put in somewhere else, and I think that makes a difference. And like Andy said, I'm not high on his team from top to bottom. His running backs could be great, but they could also suck. So let's move on to Chris.
Is that
Andy,
me?
you jump in.
Yep. So Chris has Stafford for $1. Dalvin Cook, J.K. Dobbins was a keeper. Jamar Chase was a keeper. Stephon Diggs, Zach Ertz, Deontay Johnson, kicker defense. Madison to handcuff Dalvin, Rashad Penny, George Pickens, Michael Gallup, Jamal Williams, Corey Davis. I'm going to start at Chris's bench. The bench is solid. It's not mostly the rookie dart throws that we saw a lot of teams go for this year. We're going to get to more of those teams later. But for the most part, a guy like Gallup, a guy like Jamal Williams, those are bye-week fill-ins. Those are fantasy contributors with 4 or 5 points a week that you can count on. And there's upside if there's injuries on those teams, right? So those are good guys to have week 1 on your bench. So I liked the way that he built that out. Madison being the handcuff for Dalvin Cook, I thought was great too, especially because Dalvin's got so many shoulder issues and hasn't played a full season in maybe ever. So that's great. That said, 30 for Deontay Johnson, I am not in on that at all. Chase and Diggs will be fine, but Deontay Johnson for 30 was way too much money for me. That dude feasted on the fact that Roethlisberger's shoulder was 80 years old and he couldn't throw down the field. So I expect to see the ball spread out quite a bit more this year. There's not going to be dump offs and underneaths near as much with Mitchell Trubisky throwing the ball. So Penny for 14 could be a steal.
Yeah, so I gave Chris a B. I liked what Chris did all the way around. Granted, his keepers were good. He didn't have a lot of draft cash either. But going and getting Diggs and Cook and adding Stafford for $1, like those 3 right there definitely help a whole lot to round out his starting lineup. Ertz was my big kind of downfall. I'm not high on Ertz. I don't know if Ertz is going to be much this year. He's getting older. I think he might already be dealing with some issues too. But I don't know. I'm just not high on Ertz. And for $5, I felt like you could have paid an extra couple dollars to get Waller you could have paid I would have taken Freiermuth over Ertz, I think. I know the offenses are a little different, but I think I still personally would have done that. You could have gotten somebody else even cheaper and spent that extra couple dollars somewhere else. I don't think Ertz is going to be a difference maker in any way, shape, or form. So spending the 5, I don't know about, but maybe he'll prove me wrong and it won't matter. But like Andy said, his bench, I mean, the Deontay Johnson and Pickens situation, I like Pickens, but I think Pickens is going to be a next year play, or an injury play. He's been a preseason darling, but I love Pickens. If you followed any of my dynasty stuff, I love Pickens, and I hope to hell Pickens does really well. But I don't know that this is going to be his year. So putting him up early in the draft like you did and spending 4 on him, you probably could have just gotten him late for 1. I don't know that anybody was going to put him up super early. Could have gotten him for 1 or 2 later. But I do like the Penny pick. I do like the Gallup pick. Corey Davis and Jamal Williams are going to be fine plays. I think Corey Davis is even going to get some run. I mean, I know Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson are being talked up, but Corey Davis was good when he played last year. Yeah, he had some injury issues, but when he was on the field, he was good, and you could play him week in and week out. So for $1 late, I'm all about that too. So all the way around, I like Chris's draft. So Boyer, what do you think?
I gave it an A-, simply because when I look at his team, I don't really see any holes necessarily in his team. He did a really good job of filling out his team with what he had to work with. Took advantage of the quarterbacks going down. Got Safford at 1. Getting Dalvin and Diggs kind of up top to fill in those 2 spots. I'm fine with Ertz. I think Ertz was like tight end 4 after he got traded to the Cardinals. I don't expect him to be tight end 4, but if he stays healthy, he should be fine. And tight ends were all pretty much going in that like $5 to $7 range. So like, minus a couple bucks here or there, whatever. His bench is good. I like Penny. I thought that was smart, especially if Dobbins isn't ready to play right away. He's got Penny, who should be able to start in week 1 and start rolling for him. And I like Pickens, and I like Gallup as upside plays. So for me, like, everything about Chris's team is good. He did what he needed to do in this draft almost exactly. Handcuffed his boy Dalvin, and I would anticipate him being one of the better teams, at least to start off the year.
Yep, hard to argue with that. I will say Ertz averaged over 7 targets a game in his 11 games with the Cardinals, so I don't have any concerns there, especially for $5. The volume's there, not a ton of upside, but Chris isn't the guy that swings for upside. He wants a guy who's not going to let him down. So
Ertz and like I said, I know Ertz is dealing with a calf injury already. I don't imagine calf injury is going to linger too bad, but he's getting older, and they drafted Trey McBride. There's there are things that could go the other way with Ertz pretty quick if he's not healthy and playing up to a 30-plus-year-old person's potential at this point. So
fair enough.
That's just my opinion on not liking Ertz. So I'm not saying he's necessarily bad. I just don't like him. So let's go to Colin. I'm putting Colin down with Fryer and that D to F range. I'll probably get. Everybody didn't like Colin's draft, and that's fine. Should he be this low? Maybe, maybe not. I don't like. All right, so let me run down his team real quick for all of you listening. So since you forgot already, Russell Wilson, Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, Devonta Smith, Waddle, Kittle, Stevenson, kicker defense, James Cook, Sky Moore, Treylon Burks, Carr, David Njoku, and Robbie Anderson. So to start, I didn't necessarily I like Russell Wilson, but I don't know that he should have been going for $9. Maybe it'll be worth it. Maybe it won't. I also am not super high on Josh Jacobs. I know he'll get run to start, but if something goes wrong, Zamir White could come in. They're going to be more pass heavy this year anyway, with Devonta Adams coming in. If they can get Darren Waller re-signed and he's healthy, because I think part of his is maybe a hold in. mixed with an injury so that he can get paid before he starts really playing. And then they still got Renfro. I think that they're going to be pass happy. Carr is a solid quarterback, so I think they might be more pass happy. They're not going to bank on Jacobs, but he could be a goal line back where maybe he gets a whole bunch of touchdowns. Who knows? I'm not high on Jacobs, so I'm not big on that pick. Devonta Smith, I'm also not super high on just because I don't know what that Eagles passing game is going to look like. I think it's going to be Dallas Goedert and AJ Brown as the 1 and 2, and then Devonta Smith is your wide receiver 2 behind Jalen Waddle as a third option on his own team. I don't know. Jalen Waddle at 3 for a keeper was fine. George Kittle for 29 might have been a little high. Ramondre Stevenson at 17, I'm not mad about because Damian Harris went for 15. I think the two of them are going to split pretty evenly during the year. So I guess if 15 for Harris is okay, 17 for Ramondre is all right. You get James Cook for 11. I don't know how that's going to play out. And then you take your shot on Sky Moore and Treylon Burks. I like Treylon Burks. That might be one of my favorite picks on your team. He has the upside. Listen, he's not been a training camp guy. Everybody's been talking down on him. He was an early NFL round 1 pick. He
showed up to camp with asthma.
Don't worry about it. He'll be fine.
How's Colt in the athletics department?
Not great.
Is it because of his asthma?
It doesn't help.
Did we just compare an NFL player to Tyler Boyer's 6-year-old child?
Hey, we're working with what we know.
Right,
this is a dad's podcast.
Right, we're working with with what expertise we have.
My dad had asthma, and he was a fine athlete until high school.
See?
But anyway,
So what you're saying is that Treylon Burks is as good as a high school wide receiver.
in a small town, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, small town guy, not even big town. But being drafted early, being a big body guy, going and taking AJ Brown's spot, supposedly, if he gets a lot of run for $1, that could be a guy Colin leans on. He's got Sky Moore as the other one. Sky Moore's got more competition than Treylon Burks. I don't know what Sky Moore's going to do. I would take Treylon Burks over Sky Moore here. He's got Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle as his wide receivers outside of these 2 rookies. I'm taking the shot on Treylon Burks. You can make fun of me all you want for it. We'll see how it goes later. I don't know. But his worst pick to me was Kittle at 29. I think that went a little high. Kittle's had the injury issues. Who the hell knows what the Niners offense is going to be this year? And we'll see what happens. Go ahead. One of you guys tell me all about Colin's team and how much you hate Treylon Burks. Your turn.
Go ahead, Boyer.
First off, I love Treylon Burks, but but first off, if we're looking at Colin's team, I gave him a D+ grade. This is a draft grade, not a team grade, because JT, who he kept at 64, could drag his team to playoffs. We've seen really good running backs do that before. Robbie. So after JT and Waddle had him set up, he added Josh Jacobs and Devonta Smith. That was his 2 big ads. Like, he was in a really good
Kittle
position.
was a big ad.
And I understand that JT took up a bunch of his money at $64, but like at the same time, like, you've got to add more to your wide receiver and running back core than Josh Jacobs for 39. There's much better options around that price. Like, I'd rather have David Montgomery at 32, like far and above, than I would Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs looks like he's on the outs with Josh McDaniels. McDaniels ran the Patriots running backs into a crazy committee. I don't like Jacobs this year at all. I would have gotten him for like 15 to 20. So I think 39 was a massive overpay. And it kind of derailed the rest of his drafts. I thought Kittle at 29 didn't make a ton of sense. We don't know what Lance is going to be able to do. Lance was barely hitting 50% of his passes during preseason or training camp.
Well, and if you look at it, he could have spent $5 on a tight end and spent the other 24 somewhere else.
I mean, he could have spent the other 24 combined with Josh Jacobs and go get a real running back to pair with JT, and then his team would have looked much, much better. So for me, I don't like either of that. Ramondre Stevenson was just is kind of a meh pick at $17. That's another one. It's like, well, like that $17 could have gone to a better wide receiver somewhere. I mean, Devonta Smith is your next best option. I don't know. His bench does look okay to me as far as Sky Moore. I do like Treylon Burks. I think that that's a solid pick. Maybe not right away, but Tannehill's got to throw it to somebody. They can't literally run it every time with Derrick Henry. That didn't work out very well last year for him. So Derek Carr and Njoku's okay. I don't understand the Robbie Anderson for $1 pick. I think we kind of already know that Robbie Anderson is pretty much toasted at this point. He may give you one good week if he can get a big long touchdown, but if he doesn't get that big long touchdown, he's getting you 2 catches for 11 yards. So I don't really get that. I would have understood more if he had picked up, another young player with a lot of upside or something like that that could have filled that wide receiver 2 or running back 2 void. Russell Wilson at 9. I think Russell Wilson was nominated relatively early, and it didn't seem terrible at the time at 9. But when you look at who went after, it ends up being a really bad value, which is a bummer. So I don't like Kelly's draft at all. I know he doesn't like his draft at all. So Kelly, the real draft is on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Just to log in, same link.
Yeah, good luck, bud. I'm going to jump in real quick. I was the one that pushed Colin to 39 on Josh Jacobs. I like Jacobs this year. I like the Raiders offense. I like Jacobs to score into the mid-teens for touchdowns this year. And with that, he doesn't need a ton of yards to be serviceable as a fantasy running back. But I'll admit, when I was getting up into the mid to upper 30s, when I was pushing the bidding that high, I was feeling uncomfortable. I expected to get Jacobs for about 25 when he was on my board. And he was one of the few running backs left, and you guys knocked me for not having another running back, and he was one that I was in on, but 39 was a bit high. And same with Kittle, same with Wilson. The guys on your team, Colin, that I like, you overpaid for. And then my biggest issue is that you took a draft where your starting lineup didn't turn out the way you wanted, particularly in the receiver department. And instead of making sound decisions on your bench, you went with the Tyler Dynasty approach of fuck it, get all the rookies, and maybe one of them will pan out for me. And that doesn't work for anybody. Like, Colin's team looks like a Tyler Dynasty draft. Like Taylor, Smith, Waddle, Stevenson, Cook, Moore, Burks. Like, Jesus, the number of first and second year players who, aside from Taylor and maybe Stevenson, don't have great fantasy roles on their teams is outstanding. That's just you won that draft, Colin. Whatever you were trying to do there, you nailed it. But I hate your bench. I'm not a huge fan of your starting lineup, and the guys I like, you overpaid for. So bad. A B for bad.
Literally on my sheet, I said, did Colin remember that this was redraft league? This is looking like a team I would draft with youth here. Literally what I said on my sheet.
Glad you guys are on the same page.
So good work, Colin. All right. Before we move on to Paul, let's hit a little. What you drinking? Andy, what do you got? Your big old glass of
Water
water
sucks. It really sucks. Glad we were on the same wavelength there.
It's better than this, and this is all I had in my office. So I've been in meetings all night, so here I am drinking Pepsi. You can yell at me later. Boy, what are you drinking?
I got Natty Light.
A little natty daddy over there, huh?
Yep.
Fair enough. Jeremy, that's how what are you drinking works. All right. Figure it out for next draft. Boyer, I believe you're jumping into Paul. Sorry, I couldn't say it about
I'll
Kyle
watch.
because you'd say all about it.
Paul, Brady at quarterback, Swift and Montgomery are his running backs. Cup and Debo at wide receiver, Fryermuth at tight end. He's got Elijah Mitchell in the flex. Currently does not have a kicker, so I feel like that's a position of note. Ravens at his defense, and then on his bench, he's got Drake London, drafted Brian Robinson, Khalil Herbert, Chase Claypool, Calvin Ridley, and Algier.
And Rondale Moore.
And Rondale Moore. Yep, sorry. I didn't have to scroll down a little bit because that kicker wasn't there, right? For Paul, I gave him an A-. And I've been trying to do this just for like the draft, but starting off with Debo and Cup was kind of cheating a little bit. So like he didn't have all that much to do. He didn't have a ton of money to work with, but he ended up adding Swift and Monty. And I felt like with Debo and Cup adding Swift, who there are a lot of analysts thinking that he might end up being a surprise RB1 candidate because of the passing work and stuff like that. He got him at a pretty good price. I felt like that was a really good ad. And I mean, it makes so much sense with his wide receivers being so good. And then Monty at 32, to me, like that's probably where he goes, and it makes sense. He's had a top 5 season before, and I know there were, circumstances that helped get him there. But I personally believe that Eberflus is going to want to run the ball more and use Montgomery more. They'll be in bigger sets. I think Montgomery will have a better efficiency. I think that he is a very solid running back too this year. Nothing super spectacular, but he'll get the job done. And that's all he really needs with what he had at wide receiver. So that's where his money went, and it made sense to me. Fryermuth at tight end I thought was a little sketchy just because like who's throwing to him, Trubisky or Pickett or whoever. He's in his second year. Tight ends usually don't break out until their third anyway. They've got a ton of wide receivers to keep happy as well, and Najee. So Fryermuth is probably okay, but to me he's back ends tight end one, if not kind of one of them streaming options at some point. Other than that, I'm not happy that I don't think drafting Calvin Ridley to me seems like such a waste for him, because it's going to eat up a roster spot for the entire year for him to keep him. And then Ridley may not even play going into next year. He might not be on the same team. We don't know what his situation is going to be. He could be an absolutely just a roster hog that doesn't even get kept. So I don't understand that, because Paul is in a very clear win right now mode, and he should have kept that for adding some sort of depth or something that would have helped him this year. I'm going to say tough luck on Brian Robinson, because I like Robinson a lot. He paid $9 for him, but at least he gave him his best shot. So top to bottom, I think his team is good. He's got youth. He's got upside on the bench. I think it's a good team. A- on the drafts. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, Paul's team is his keepers in my eyes. Cup and Debo are studs. They carried Paul's team last year. Brady for 2. Brady did it last year. Brady's an enigma, so you can't really talk about how old he is or anything like that. But the team as a whole, I don't know how I feel about the Bucks. I feel like there's more issues. Swift at 58 and Montgomery at 32. I don't care for either of these players. The price is probably fine on both of them, but the Bears O-line is god awful. There's not going to be a lot of end zone looks, I think, for either of these guys. And Swift does the bulk of his damage in the passing game, and we don't get points for catching. So, Swift doesn't have a ton of 20 carry games to his name. And until I see that and a clean bill of health all at the same time out of Swift. I'm not going to view him as a fantasy RB1 in our non-PPR league. Freiermuth for 5 is not good. You should have snagged either one of the tight ends Boyer got in Tunyon or Knox, because you're fishing for a touchdown either way. Why pay $5 to fish for a touchdown? Elijah Mitchell for 36 was good. And then the bench here is a bunch of lotto tickets. London and Robinson, obviously, compared to me paying 17 for Gibson, Robinson for 9 was highway robbery at the time, but it doesn't feel so good now. London for 4 also steps right into being the wide receiver 1. So I think that those are fine compared to like the dart throws that Colin had. Herbert handcuffing Montgomery is good. Claypool for 5 I like a lot, especially when Deontay went for 30. I like Claypool for 5. Calvin Ridley for 2 is just disgusting. Like, why are we doing this? And Paul did it last year with ETN. He's just stashing a guy that maybe he can trade later, maybe he can have as a keeper, but it's not the way I play. I want to have the best team on the field, best team on my roster. That's why I want handcuffs, because then I don't have to blow my fab to protect my guys. I don't want any of that nonsense. So
I believe Paul also drafted Watson, or was that Charlie last year for $1?
I don't know who did it last year. Charlie did it this year though.
I think it was Paul that drafted Watson for $1 last year, planning on just keeping him all year again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
it's just a Paul thing.
When you look at like Etienne last year, though, like even with the injury, you knew what his situation was going to be the following year. Ridley hasn't played will not have played in 2 years, and then I almost guarantee.
And Ridley was an old rookie. Ridley's going to be like 29 when he comes back.
Right. So like I have Ridley in Dynasty just as a flyer. I don't expect anything crazy. If it happens, great. But I'm not expecting it. And in redraft where he's eaten up a spot like this, I don't get it. And he should have been undrafted, honestly, and just left alone all year. And I think Paul is going to regret it come waiver wire time, because he's going to have to figure out a way to either move him or he's going to end up dropping him anyway and having wasted the $2.
Yeah. I mean, $2 is $2 if you have to drop him, but I think it's dumb to stash a guy like that when.
Yeah, but you could have added that $2. You could have added that $2. You could have added that $2 to Freiermuth and gotten Waller.
Maybe. I mean, you can only add $1 because the other dollar has to go to whoever your last bench guy is. But I see your point.
All right. So I gave Paul a B. I thought it was a fine draft. Like they've said, Kupp and Samuel, they're covering most of your team. Swift, Montgomery, and Mitchell. I like Mitchell. I'd take Mitchell at 36 over Montgomery at 32. I'd take Mitchell over 39 for Jacobs. I think that value is fine. As long as he can stay healthy, which we bank on health, except for my team. As long as all these guys are healthy, I'm taking Mitchell over both of them. I think his situation is so much better. I know everybody's down on the Mitchell because of the Trey Lance situation. Trey Lance is going to run. Trey Lance is going to eat up some of that. I don't know that he is. I think they're going to give Trey Lance the best opportunity to win games, not get hit, get himself in a good situation. And a lot of that could be handing the ball up, dumping it off to Mitchell, letting him do his thing, and still finding the open receivers downfield. I think Mitchell's going to be fine. He's going to be the RB1 in San Francisco. I like that price compared to some of these other guys that went in that same area. So with that, having the 2 stud wide receivers, grabbing 3 running backs that can all be top 15 options, I like it. I like Freiermuth. I have a problem with these young guys, though. So I like the pick of Freiermuth. I was bidding up with him. I was out of money. Otherwise, he might have gone higher, because that's my problem. His bench is fine. Like Andy said, the handcuff of Herbert was good. I liked Brian Robinson at the time. Drake London, I think, is going to be an okay pick at $4. Could be a good keeper moving forward. Ridley is dumb. I don't like the Algier pick. Rondale Moore could be fine with DeAndre Hopkins out for the first 6 games. So overall, I don't dislike Paul's draft. Maybe he could have done a couple things different, but not draft Ridley and Algier, but those are guys that I don't like. Ridley at all. We've all talked about it. So, but that's just a Paul thing. He likes to draft that one guy to keep. This should be a me thing, but that's a Paul thing in here. So it was an all right draft. He's got a good team. We'll see where it goes. Andy, jump into my team.
Ty's team is very good. You got Patrick Mahomes, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, Cole Kmet, Rashad Bateman, Tyler Bass, Bills defense, Devin Singletary, Michael Thomas, Brandon Ayuk, Christian Kirk, Kenneth Gainwell, the Saints defense. Minor nitpicks. You didn't have to spend 7 on Kmet. You could have gone with the cheaper guy if you're just fishing for touchdowns, but there's upside there. Still, 7 was more than you needed to go.
It was more than I wanted to go.
Yeah, that's fair. Saints defense, you didn't need 2 of those. You should have just spent the $1 on Chuba or Foreman, whoever you think the handcuff is for CMC, because Lord knows now that he's on your team, he's for sure getting hurt. But what Ty did was he took 3 good wide receiver keepers in Higgins, Pittman, and Bateman, and almost max money, and turned it into a top 3 quarterback, the top 2 running backs on most people's board, with Taylor off being kept by Colin. You got McCaffrey and Eckler, and I like Singletary a lot. And then you've got depth in Thomas and Ayuk and Kirk. I like all 3 of those guys for what you paid for them, for not having to be consistent starters. I think any of those is great. I don't like Michael Thomas as a $15 wide receiver 2, but as a $6 bench stash, go for it, bud. I think that's great. My only issue is your tight end, and the rest of your team is so far and away better than everybody else's. You should be able to buy Kelsey off of Charlie about week 4, and then you'll be pretty good. So great work, Ty. Freaking nailed it.
Thanks. Boyer?
Yeah, I gave you an A+. You were in a great position with those wide receivers. I mean, it's not like those wide receivers were, say, as good as like the Cup Debo or whatever, but you had 3 great, breakout type wide receivers, and you just said, I'm going to trust these guys. I'm going to go get just top players. You got at least 2 top 5 running backs, if not top 3. Mahomes. I think Kmet is a good tight end breakout candidate. This is 3rd year. That's about when tight ends usually break out. I think the coaching staff will understand how to not only use Fields, but also how to use Kmet and the athleticism that he has. I'm not as high on Singletary, but I still think he's fine as an RB3 to give you the depth that you need for inevitably when CMC misses for a hamstring or something. Ayuk and Kirk are great value picks, which is only going to help you, going forward as far as your wide receivers, if in case injury or during bye weeks. I don't think you're going to feel those as much as the rest of us. Really, as long as your team stays healthy, which there are some concerns, CMC, you should be the favorite to win the championship. I had your best pick as CMC at 70. I actually thought 70 is a good price for him as RB2 on most boards. And if he stays healthy, he would be RB1. He's only RB2 because of the injury risk.
And his team is mediocre, but he's going to be the team, so it'll be fine.
Right. I mean, that happened a few years ago too, where his team was mediocre, but he was putting up 28 fantasy points a week or whatever because they only gave it to him. And I just don't see where that's necessarily going to stop as long as he's healthy, because he's just too good not to get the ball. But I also had your worst pick as CMC for 70 because it's really risky with injury history. And injuries are really the only thing that's going to derail you this year. And we've seen that happen to you in the past. So, I mean, if JT was there, I'm sure you would have spent up and got JT instead, and then we would be having a different conversation because then you wouldn't have the injury risk. After JT, it was pretty much Eckler and then a couple guys, CMC and Henry, that were, had some injury risk to them. So you had to pick one. And I don't blame you for picking CMC at all. I hope he stays healthy for you because I'd love to see if this team could just absolutely destroy everybody. But it is especially, I mean, it was just your luck that if CMC does go down, you'll kind of come back to the down to earth with the rest of us, and you'll have to fight a little bit harder.
Right, which is why I paid 21 for Singletary, because I needed that 3rd running back. I needed to get somebody. And at that point, I had no money to spend. And finally, there was a running back going in that range that I could afford. And I said, hell, I'm getting it.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out for you. I am interested to see if you would have kept Singletary for 2 if Bateman would have gone for over 21, because that was the dilemma that you had. Like, who knows if it cost you money or not? Could you have?
Can't
kept
imagine
Singletary
Bateman's
and then,
going that high.
yeah, and then you.
I think Bateman would have ended in that $15-ish range.
Yeah.
So I probably could.
I didn't expect Singletary to go 21 though.
No, me neither. I expected both of Bateman and Singletary both at about the $15 range. So I said, let me keep the $1 wide receiver. I'll figure out running back.
Yeah.
So for me, like you guys said, I just needed 2 stud running backs. I knew I'd grab a quarterback. That tight end situation, I was going to figure out. Whether or not Komet's a good choice. I have him as probably my worst choice along with Michael Thomas, $6 and $7. I could have put that together and got somebody else, but Michael Thomas has the upside. Komet has an upside. If Komet can even be a top 10, I think I'm fine. As long as he doesn't completely bust, I'm not worried about it. I had a great situation going in, and that really saved my ass. So here we go. I'm going to jump over to Charlie. I think we're all in agreement on my team. So Charlie got Trey Lance, Cam Akers, AJ Dillon, DJ Moore, Gabe Davis, Darren Waller, Travis Kelce, kicker defense, Chris Olave, Pacheco, Chris Godwin, Zamir White, Michael Carter, and Deshaun Watson. I gave Charlie a C minus. I did not like his draft. You're sitting on AJ Dillon as a keeper at $10, which is fine. I like AJ Dillon as a $10 keeper. That's phenomenal. But now let's talk about the rest of your draft. You got Cam Akers coming off an Achilles as your running back 1 to go with AJ Dillon. And then you did nothing. You're Kelce. Sitting on, but he's sitting on Isaiah Pacheco, Zamir White, and Michael Carter as his other running backs. If Cam Akers isn't healthy and AJ Dillon doesn't take a huge step up, could be in just as bad of a running back situation as some of the other teams that we've talked about. DJ Moore is a young, good talent. He's never been a top 10 finisher, though. It's not who he is. And that's your wide receiver 1, followed by everybody's called breakout, Gabe Davis. I feel like you should have gone bigger, not spent 16 on Davis, and maybe gotten a bigger name wide receiver than DJ Moore. I like DJ Moore. I like the talent. It's just never all put together in a season to become a top 10, top 7 finisher to where he's going to help carry your team. Cam Akers, we don't know what he's going to be. AJ Dillon should be fine. Trey Lance should be a solid quarterback, but for $5, throw a couple extra dollars on there for a more proven guy, unless you're just taking the upside here. His best position is tight end, Darren Waller and Travis Kelce. Outside of that, Chris Godwin was a solid pick at 10. But Chris Olave at 13 could be okay, but I don't know what that team's going to be. So really, all in all, I was not a big fan of this draft. Waller and Kelce being as tight ends is phenomenal. But you could have either not paid for Kelce and gone 7 for Waller and spent that 47 somewhere else, 46 technically, because that would have had to been saved for something, right? Or not drafted Waller at 7, although that's a great price for Waller, assuming he's going to be healthy and play and whatever. But you could have also said, hey, I spent 47 on Kelce. Let me throw that 7 into more on DJ Moore. Let me throw that 7 into somebody else. Throw that 7 with the 13 on Chris Olave and go get yourself another $20 guy. I don't know. I felt like he wasn't in a great spot coming in, and he knew it, and we all knew it. But I don't know. I'm just not big on the double tight end and DJ Moore being your wide receiver 1 and Cam Akers being your running back 1 coming back, because I think both of those are questionable situations. So.
That me or Boyer?
Whoever.
All right, I'll jump in. So Charlie was in a tough spot coming into the draft. We talked about it on our keeper episode 2 weeks ago or whatever. He was well behind everybody. Dylan was his only keeper with not a ton of value, and his budget was, I think, the lowest of everybody. So he was in a hole. When you're in a hole, you got to figure something out. Going 47 for Kelsey might not have been the best way to address that, but from Charlie's, I feel like a lot of the picks that Charlie made are looking to next year. If Kelsey doesn't carry his team, and I don't know that he will, then that's a guy that last year I sold for $18 in the middle of the year. So Charlie can set it up next year by selling these guys. I don't want to say that that's how he planned this, but that's a very tempting trade piece if worse comes to worse for him. Getting Waller after getting Kelsey, I don't think made any sense whatsoever. You didn't have $7 to waste and you wasted it. That said, he may have just been trying to get the bidding going because I don't think anybody thought that Waller was going to stop $7. So maybe, but that was a mistake clearly. Akers for 33. I get what you're doing. There's upside there. The Rams are going to score touchdowns, and if he hadn't popped his Achilles, everybody would be spending way more money on him than 33. I don't like it, but you gotta shoot for the stars when you're in the spot that Charlie's in. I like what he did with the receivers. I feel like DJ Moore at $24 is priced at what he's been doing, and he can take a step forward with Baker Mayfield. I feel like Gabe Davis at $16 has a little bit of that step forward baked into it, what he paid, but I think that there is definitely more room for growth. They lost Cole Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders. Thank you. I think they're both gone. So like Gabe Davis is the number 2 there. He's a massive red zone target for them. So like that major boom potential there, and he didn't have to pay a ton for him. And then getting Godwin late for 10 is fantastic. So I love Charlie's receivers. I didn't think he needed to pay 13 for Olave. That was way too much to spend on a rookie receiver with Jameis Winston throwing to him. But I love what he did with the receivers. It's just the rest of his team is just kind of like there's just a lot of grabbing lotto tickets. You're hoping that Trey Lance is going to run for 900 yards and be a fantasy stud, and even then you had to pay $5 for him. So I don't get it. You know, I'd rather spend $1 or $2 on Aaron Rodgers or $1 or $2 on Dak than $5 on Trey Lance because you're swinging for the fences. Like I get that you have to swing for the fences, but I don't feel like that's the best way to do it. There's spots where I see what he was doing and I like it. There's spots where I see what he was doing and I don't like it. But at the end of the day, Charlie had to swing for the fences to make this team work, and we'll see. Or you got anything?
Yeah, so I gave him an F plus, and the reason it's not an F is because he got Kelsey. But yeah, the Waller pick made no sense to me, even at the dollar amount. I think that him getting Waller at 7 means that everybody kind of expects Waller to take a step down. I personally think that Waller will be almost a complete bust. He's 33. He was not healthy very much last year. They added Devontae Adams, and Waller was getting a lot of production purely off of volume. And I don't see where he, is the same player that we've seen. He might have a couple of good games, but I think that's going to be it. I don't like the Akers pick. I don't think Trey Lance at $5. I don't even see much keeper value in that because quarterbacks this year, Rodgers, Brady, Stafford went for $1 or $2. That doesn't really make sense to me unless Lance becomes the next Patrick Mahomes. And I don't know if I would have taken that swing at $5. DJ Moore has had 4 touchdowns each year for the last, 3 or 4 years. So we know he's just not a touchdown guy, and that's fine. But I don't know if Baker's going to have it in him to give him the 1,300 or 1,400 yards to help make up for that deficit. Gabriel Davis, a wide receiver 2, to me doesn't feel really great at $16. I felt like it was a little bit of an overpay considering he hasn't really done it in the regular season. I love Godwin. That was pretty much the only pick I actually liked of Charlie's. I love Godwin at 10. I thought that was an absolute steal. And if he had a better team and could wait for Godwin to get healthy, that would be a great boost for him here in a few weeks into the season. Instead, he's either going to be looking to keep Godwin at 10 or he's going to end up selling Godwin because he's one of the guys that he can sell and get some draft capital for next year. So I did not like Charlie's team, minus like 2 players. I don't really understand where he was going with his team. When you have it like $170 some and a crap keeper, you're looking for value as much as possible, and getting Kelsey at value and Akers at value and DJ Moore at value and Gabriel Davis slightly above value. Like that's not what he should have been looking for at all. So I thought it was a bad draft from Charlie, but he should be able to set himself up well for next year. But he's my leader for being naked.
All right. Boyer, you want to take us into duo?
Yeah. So duo has Jalen Hurts, Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, Cortland Sutton, Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry, Corduroy Patterson in the flex. And then bench is looking like Kadarius Toney, Garrett Wilson, Bobby Trees, Hines, Dotson, and Hilliard to finish it out. I gave duo a solid like C plus. I felt like there was a lot to love and a lot to kind of strongly dislike. 8 games from Derrick Henry can drag your team to the playoffs where you might get lucky and win the whole thing. Who knows? That's not coming from experience or anything, though. I thought Kamara for 52 could be a steal if he's able to play the full year and push his suspension over to 2023. I think that, as long as that team stays healthy, there's a good chance that we see the Kamara, the top 5 Kamara, the Kamara that, scored 60 points or whatever on, was it Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever it was. I think that's good. He's got 2 good wide receivers to pair with those running backs, and Sutton is primed for a breakout. Keenan Allen's consistency should provide a safe floor. That's kind of what I like about his team, is the running back situation, the wide receivers, assuming Kamara can play. I don't like the Hurts pick at 10 just because so many other quarterbacks went so much cheaper. I think he's fine. He's a fine fantasy quarterback. But that makes him quarterback 3 taken off the board. And I don't think anybody really had Hurts as the 3rd best quarterback in fantasy.
Jeremy did.
Anybody who knows things about fantasy had Hurts as quarterback 3 in fantasy. So I felt like he's that, like it's fine because he only spent, like, it's only $10 at the end of the day, but like he kind of they definitely could have gotten, better value there. So I think relying on Corduroy as their flex is probably going to be a mistake. I mean, he had a group of games that were really, really good last year. But if you look at the other games that he had, they weren't so good. And now that team has maybe gotten worse at quarterback, and he's gotten competition at running back from a couple different guys. Plus they added Drake London. So I don't know if Corduroy Patterson is going to be able to do it at 32 again. Henry is kind of a mess. I like Bobby Trees on the bench just because I think he's a good value play. Like as a veteran wide receiver for the Titans, he should get a lot of the earlier looks, week 1 through 6 or whatnot before Burks, hopefully cures his asthma and starts running wild. But I think everyone else is kind of wild cards on his bench. So I think the good kind of outweighs the bad, but he's going to have some work on, they're going to have some work on waivers to do to fill some holes. I think they're going to very quickly realize that they can't rely on Corduroy or, rely on some of their bench players who are just kind of dart throws.
Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with most of what Boyer said. Patterson, I'm pretty sure at some point this season, Patterson said it himself that he needs to take a step back in his workload. So I'm not excited about that being their running back 3. And then the only running back behind that I see, if I'm not missing anybody, is Naeem Hines, because Hilliard's just a handcuff. So he's only there if Henry goes down. So I don't count him in the tiering there. So it's just Kamara and Henry, and then Patterson and Hines, which is pretty thin, if you ask me. Especially
I had Hines last year. It was not a fun ride.
Yeah, especially if Kamara gets suspended at any point, that's gonna be a tough pill to swallow for these guys. Hurts for 10, just like Boyer said. I like Hurts a lot this year. What he can do with his legs, the fact they went out and got AJB, I think is all great for him. But the fact that they had to pay $10 to get him feels kind of like you bought him at peak value. So he's gonna have to do a lot to return anything for you there. Sutton at 8 as a keeper was great. Keenan Allen for 32 feels way high for me. He is a steady Eddie type receiver, but again, we don't play PPR, and 32 for a guy who's going to score 6 touchdowns and have 1,100 yards is not what you should be paying for that guy. So maybe not. Hunter Henry, not really jazzed about, but he was only $1, so maybe that works. And then the rest of the bench is fine. I like that they handcuffed Henry, Bobby Trees, and Dotson and Wilson. Tony dart throws are fine.
Yeah, so
I give him a P for participation trophy.
Yeah, I have a feeling I'm on the same boat as you guys with most of this. Hurts for 10, I thought was slightly over, but whatever. Go get your guy if that's the quarterback you like. Kamara and Henry, I like as a duo. The injury risk, the suspension risk, some of that is going to be rough this year. If any of that happens, they're going to be in trouble. Sutton and Allen, I actually don't mind Allen for 32. It was a fine pick. For what he has, Allen is going to be a safety net, really. He's going to be the steady Eddie, like you said. He's going to be fine. Cortland Sutton has to take that step, and his running backs have to stay healthy / not suspended. So I think that's a nice floor play. For 32, maybe it was a little high, but I'm not mad about that pick. His whole bench is upside plays, minus Robert Woods, which is a consistent fill-in type guy. So mediocre draft. We'll see how it goes. So Andy, take us to Jeremy.
Oh boy, will
I'm
I.
excited to hear Andy's take on Jeremy's team. I really am.
All right, Cousins, Mixon, Chase Edmonds, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Mark Andrews, Miles Sanders. Washington Commandos, defense, no kicker, CEH, Hopkins, KJ Hamler, MVS, Jameson Williams, Trevor Lawrence, Christian Watson. So I like Cousins. Mixon and Andrews were stud keepers. And I like the DeAndre Hopkins stash for $8. I think could be a difference maker down the stretch. And that is where my compliments end for Jeremy's team. I think $49 for CeeDee Lamb was pretty high. I'd have rather had Diggs. I know that Cooper's gone, and there's a way to view the world where Lamb's just going to get force fed and be a monster. But I think that the Dallas offense is going to struggle a bit, and I don't see him returning value at 49. Chase Edmonds at 21. All right. Jeremy keeps texting me all of his other auction leagues, which, good Lord, that guy is in a lot of auction fantasy leagues, and he's been getting Edmonds in all of them. And props to him. Go get your guy. He has not been paying $21 in any of these leagues. He's been paying like $12 or $9. So $21 feels ridiculous to me. And then seeing that he's been getting him for, like a reasonable price in all of his other leagues makes me think, wow, this was ridiculous. So good luck. I don't think that one's going to work out for you. I think Chase Edmonds across his 4 career seasons maybe totals up to one good fantasy season if you add it all together. But
At one point, didn't Chase Edmonds just not even have a goal line carry at all for like 3 straight years or something?
yeah, it was something like that. So
Yeah.
maybe, but maybe not. ASB was great down the stretch when Swift and Hawk were out. They added Shark. There's just a lot of mouths to feed. Maybe he's the guy. Maybe he's not. We really won't know until we start seeing games week 1. $16 for that's fine. Miles Sanders for 15. For what you paid, maybe he scores a touchdown. That's your hope, right? But it's fine. CEH is another one that has been disappointing year after year. But again, Jeremy didn't really pay a ton for any of these guys, but I'm looking for the guy, like the guy that Jeremy spent up on was CD, and I'm not excited about that. And he got a back end quarterback. As much as I like Cousins, he's not a top guy. So it's really down to Mixon and Andrews as his keepers, and then all of these $15, $13, $19 guys to figure it out for him. And I don't like the way that he built this team. So I'll give it a D for I have major doubts.
That's fair. So I'm with you. I like Mixon. He got Lamb, which is at least a wide receiver 1. So he's got a running back 1. He's got a wide receiver 1. He's got a tight end 1. And that's about where it stops. So I'm with you. I think CEH will take a step forward. I don't know what that'll mean. So for $19, whatever. I think he should have been talking more about that than Miles Sanders, but he was stuck on Miles Sanders all night. So here we go. Hopkins is fine at 8, but we'll see where that team's at that point, because I have a feeling Arizona might struggle a little bit this year. So we'll see. But other than that, Trevor Lawrence might be a starting quarterback by midseason. So
that's bold. You're not wrong.
So I don't know. It is what it is, but I don't like Jeremy's draft. I think he could have spent all these middle tier dollars, 16, 13, 15, 19, 8, 7 on NBS, to just go and invest in something else. Maybe not spend 49 on CeeDee Lamb, get a second better wide receiver than Amon-Ra. I like Amon-Ra, but once again, we've talked about Detroit multiple times. Who knows what Swift and Hawkinson and Amon-Ra and all that's going to be, because we don't know what Detroit's going to be. And if they are halfway decent, there's a lot of mouths to feed right there. So
Quintus
we'll
Cephas.
Boy, what do you got on Jeremy?
I feel like we always kind of rag on Jeremy's draft, and I feel like it's always year after year, it's pretty much the same thing that we rag him on, and that's the fact that he ends up getting these players like Edmonds and Sanders and CEH all for mid-tier dollars, and we keep telling him he needs to consolidate some of these mid players and go get a big-time player who's going to actually provide fantasy points on a week-to-week basis. And I think that's the same issue this year, obviously, with Edmonds, Sanders, and CEH. Them combined was $55. You could have got on Kamara, could have added a couple dollars and gotten Aaron Jones, and there's your plug-and-play running back. Instead, he's going to have to try and figure out between Edmonds, Sanders, and CEH if he has anybody who can actually consistently play between the three of them. So I don't like the Cousins pick for $1, simply because there was better quarterbacks left. Andy, you got stuck with Dak because you thought that somebody would put him to 2.
Jeremy and Chris both didn't have a quarterback at that point, so I threw Dak out there because I was worried that they were just gonna wait us all out and get a guy for $1 that was good, because Dak and Rodgers were both on the board,
right?
And they went with Cousins and Stafford as their starting quarterbacks, and I think Walker ended up stashing Rodgers for 2 on his bench. I was like, okay, like I don't have issues with any of those guys as a starting quarterback, but I figured Dak and Rodgers would rank ahead of them. So yeah, I'll take Dak for $1.
And with Jeremy so high on CeeDee Lamb, you'd think Dak for 2 would have made sense.
Yeah,
right. I mean, you absolutely get the stack. And so,
speaking of Charlie, when you're swinging for the fences, find a stack.
So Dak for 1, Rodgers for 2, Brady for 2, Stafford for 1. All those seem like better low-cost options than Cousins. If you think Cousins is going to have a great year because they've got a new offensive coordinator and all this stuff, and they're supposed to throw it more, great. stash him on your bench for $1 instead. Like he didn't need to be your starter or your only quarterback. Go get Rodgers to make sure you have a quarterback who 2-time MVP. Like go get that guy, and then see if Cousins isn't your guy for sure. It's low opportunity cost at that point. It doesn't make sense that they're going to ride with Cousins and then just that's who their guy is. That seems weird. So I don't know. I gave him a C- because I like the Lamb pick. I thought Lamb was fine. But the running backs that the Jeremy chose at this mid-tier costs perplexed me. And I think he's gonna struggle as he goes through mid-season, and some of these guys are either halfway replaced or just continue to do the same thing they've done for like the last 3 years.
All right, so let's jump over to Walker. Walker's got Murray, Zeke, Tony Pollard, Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, Kyle Pitts, Amari Cooper, kicker and defense, Melvin Gordon, Darrell Henderson, Tyler Lockett, Aaron Rodgers, OBJ, and Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram and OBJ, I could have done without. But the rest of the team, I'm actually not mad about. Aaron Rodgers for $2, we just talked about, fine. Grab the quarterback. You've got Kyler Murray for $9. You spent $11 for 2 good quarterbacks. I'm not mad about that. Zeke and Pollard are going to be my question mark. I know that they could split 50-50. I know that the Cowboys can run the ball. They can pass the ball, whatever. But Melvin Gordon and Darrell Henderson are your next running backs. And that's where my other concern is. I think Darrell Henderson can get some work. I talked about not being huge on Cam Akers earlier. Melvin Gordon can get some work as well, but I don't know that you're plugging in Melvin Gordon every week. I think you got to bank on Darrell Henderson getting a 40% split with Cam Akers at this point. If Zeke and Pollard aren't splitting perfectly. So that's my one. That's pretty much my one negative on this team. I think the rest of the team was put together nicely. I don't even mind Zeke at 47. Zeke can be a solid RB1. Really depends upon what Pollard's role is, but you also have Pollard. So I just don't know what you're going to do about the two of those. That running back situation's rough. I still don't like Tyler Lockett, and I actually like him less now with this situation. But I mean, he's fine, whatever. But other than that, I like Justin Jefferson and AJ Brown put together. I mean, even Amari Cooper being your 3 isn't bad. Kyle Pitts at 11 being a keeper was solid. You got a fairly well-rounded team. You're going to have to just figure out this running back situation as you go through the year.
Yep, I'm with you, Ty. I think having a good quarterback, good tight end helps kind of shore up some places where you could be giving up some points to other teams. So you should be coming out ahead there. And then locking down Jefferson and AJ Brown as your wide receivers puts you in pretty good company as far as that goes. So looking at Zeke, Pollard, Henderson, and Melvin Gordon, having to start 2 of those guys, maybe 3 if you don't want Amari at your flex. It's a depth issue, but you can figure that out on the waiver wire and with trades and stuff. I like the way that Walker built this team. I think that it's relatively well-rounded at the top. He did a pretty good job of getting his money into his starting lineup, and it's decent. D for decent.
So I had Walker at a C, pretty average. I mean, Kyler Murray, Jay Jettas, AJ Brown, they're all good for fantasy football. Obviously the issue here is with the running backs. I thought grabbing Zeke at the price that he did at 47 with Pollard already on his team, I think that made total sense. And he was making fun of everyone. He was like, Zeke 47, like done. And honestly, he was right. Like that was a good price for Zeke. But then he just didn't get an RB2. So like, I don't really know what he's going to end up doing. Is he going to end up doing like what Andy did last year and play both Zeke and Pollard together at RB1 and RB2? Andy had success with Chubb and Hunt doing that, at least to a certain degree. I don't think it was super. I don't think it was super. I don't think he was super happy about it when he was doing it, but it did work to a certain degree. But I don't really view Zeke and Pollard in the same situation. They're not really the focal point of their offense like Chubb and Hunt were. So I don't really think that that's a viable winning option for him. It's an option, not a winning option. And then you got a bunch of these 1B-ish guys like Henderson and Gordon. Like, he really, really needed to get a decent running back too. The one thing I'll say is that AJ Brown went for $32. I thought that was a really good price. And Andy has lamented both Keenan Allen and Deontay Johnson at that same price. And when you look at who they could have gotten, AJ Brown at that same cost with the insane upside that he has, those guys are overpriced at that point, because AJ Brown could absolutely be, a top 12 wide receiver. And I don't think the other guys have almost any shot to be a top 12 wide receiver really going forward. So great price for AJ Brown. Pitts can make up for it if he gets touchdowns, but I don't think he's going to this year because the Falcons offense just isn't built for it. I am happy that somebody got Lockett so Tyler could be upset about it all year. It wouldn't be a good podcast if we didn't have some Lockett hate from Tyler. But yeah, I thought that AJ Brown, probably his best pick at 32. And I think his worst pick was the fact that, none of his players were head scratchers, but his inability to get a solid RB2 option was his issue. Honestly, he could trade for CEH and plug him into RB2. That's kind of where he's at right now. So Jeremy, you should talk to Walker a little bit.
All right. Well, there's your quick redraft, or your quick draft recap. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys got something out of it. Hopefully some of you are going to pick up draft tips for next year so we don't grade you so low again. Maybe some of you will come in with a plan and stick to a plan.
Colin.
Maybe some of you will remember that there's running backs in the draft. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Maybe some of you will just start playing for next year already, which if you are, sell somebody to me. I got extra draft dollars. We'll go from there.
That's the Cody strategy right there. Sell week one.
All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you guys got something out of it. Like, subscribe, comment, tell us how bad our takes were. Tell us how bad our teams are, whatever. But we'll see you guys for the start of the season here shortly. See ya.